Oh, how's it going, everybody? Adrian here from the Gaming Observer, and welcome back to your daily news update for Wednesday, September the 30th. That feels weird to say, September the 30th. A whole month has gone by already. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, let's jump in. So, I just wanted to give you a quick update on the ongoing antitrust dispute between Epic Games and Apple, because it is going now to the next level. The judge that was responsible for overseeing the entire case has basically gotten to a point where, they've decided that it should be elevated to a trial by jury. So there's probably still some minor things that they need to figure out, but ultimately what this entire case hinges on is now going to go to a jury. And that is now expected to take place in July of 2021. Now, there are still some other things that need to get taken care of. For example, Epic tried to do like a restraining order on Apple, which is a different thing in corporate speak, basically to try and get Fortnite back onto the App Store. And the judge basically didn't even say anything about it. I don't know if that's still to come or if that also was going to rely on whatever the jury says. Nonetheless, here's what the judge said, quote, "I think this is going to be a fascinating trial. Walled gardens have existed for decades. Nintendo has had a walled garden, Sony has had a walled garden, Microsoft has had a walled garden. In this particular industry, what Apple is doing is not much different." End quote. So I won't get into any more of the details there, but please feel free to read the extensive information that's provided by various news outlets. A good one is gamesindustry.biz. But I did want to point out that there is still a long journey ahead for both of these companies. Okay, and then the rest of today's show is going to be a bunch of stories, basically exciting things that are happening, and I'm not going to use the sound effects for these, I'm just going to talk through them. So first things first, we got a bunch of new release dates for some games. The first one here is the Crown Tundra, which is the expansion for Pokemon Sword and Shield. That is now going to be arriving on October 22nd. And basically the gimmick for this expansion is that every single legendary Pokemon that has ever existed will be able to be captured. Unfortunately, they are split between the two versions of the game, so if you want them all, you're going to have to own both of those games or trade. And this is going to be the second and final expansion for this generation of Pokemon games. We'll see if that's a concept they want to revisit in the future for sure. Next up, we now know that Xbox Game Pass is going to be getting EA Play starting on November 10th, which is the same day as the Xbox Series X and S launch date. And if you don't remember that, basically EA Play is EA's version of the subscription service, and it contains most of their back catalog. The Sims, FIFA, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, all your favorites are going to be on the Game Pass. So it's going to start just for console players, and then anybody on PC has to wait until December. So just 1 month. Next up, we got Torchlight 3, which is launching on all platforms on October 13th. Except for the Nintendo Switch, which is due before 2021. And I mean, Torchlight 3, it's been in early access on Steam for a couple months, so this is just the official launch, and I believe the first time on consoles as well. We got a blog update from Edmund McMillan for The Binding of Isaac Rebirth for its final expansion called Repentance. Apparently it's coming before the end of the year. And he said that this expansion is so large that it's quote-unquote basically a sequel. Apparently, it's even more substantial than what Rebirth was to the original Flash Isaac game, which is just huge. And I mean, I think he's been trying to be done with this game for a while now. I think Repentance only came around on a whim, basically. I think Repentance only came around on a fluke, so I imagine this is going to be the final expansion for the game. So all of those things are coming up. As for things that are available right now, we've got Spelunky 2, which is now available on PC, after previously being available on the PlayStation 4. Just for the past month or so. And, like I said when it came out, it has been received incredibly well for both veterans and new players. So if you want to get it on PC, you can now do that. However, it does not yet have online multiplayer like the PlayStation 4 version, because it's still being worked on, it's a little janky, but it will eventually come out, and it will eventually have crossplay with the console version as well. And then our final story for today, Doom Eternal is now available on the Xbox Game Pass starting tomorrow. And that's going to be the first new game from ZeniMax following its acquisition from Microsoft. And I imagine we're going to start seeing a lot more of those in the future as well. Anyway, folks, that is pretty much the most interesting things that happened today. Really, the only other thing is that if you're really invested in Diablo 4, they do quarterly updates, and they just put out the latest one. Has some interesting factoids in there. Anyway, that'll be all for today. I greatly appreciate you tuning in. And I'd also like to thank IJ for leaving me a 5-star review. And she said, quote, "Listen to it every day and I am a smarter woman for it." End quote. I greatly appreciate that. That's what I'm trying to do here, make you all smarter. Anyway, folks, until next time, happy gaming, everyone. Hello and welcome to the TGO After-Show. I really loved that review when I just read it. I'm a smarter woman because of it. It's great. Anyway, I'm going to take a second to talk about The Binding of Isaac. And just a super quick brief, if you don't know, The Binding of Isaac, it's like the cornerstone of roguelikes. It inspired many of the roguelikes you know today. I have put just under 1,000 hours into The Binding of Isaac Rebirth. It's my most played game for sure. And as with every piece of content that comes out from Edmund Macmillan, I am extremely excited for this. Repentance is going to be, based on what he's showing off in this blog post, huge. Absolutely huge. And I guess I'm a little cautiously optimistic, I suppose, because, you know, when Rebirth first came out, Rebirth is the sequel to The Binding of Isaac, which was originally a Flash game. Rebirth kind of brought it up to modern standards. When Rebirth first came out, it was a tremendous game. It was really, really good. And then the various expansions over time improved various aspects. However, the last expansion that came out for the game, Afterbirth Plus, a lot of people really didn't like it, and I can't say I really did either all that much. And in fact, if you play the most up-to-date version of the game with Afterbirth Plus, I would say it's actually not its best version, even though there's technically more content. Because honestly, the game just got super bloated. There was a bunch of stuff that they added in that just felt really, I don't want to say useless, but just average, pretty meh. They had a new final boss and stuff like that even, and those weren't really well received. And there weren't many updates to improve all of that stuff, you know? I feel like the balance of the game right now actually is pretty bad, and you can only do well at the game if you understand what that balance is, or get extremely lucky. And with the way that the game is built, like, all of the extra final bosses that they added are kind of optional, and so you kind of just do it once and then never think about it again because you didn't like it. Now, from my understanding on Repentance, is that it's going to be much more than that. Not just, you know, adding a final boss. There's going to be mechanics that change, new features. You know, what he says is that it's such a big update that it's bigger than a sequel. So I just hope that, you know, this amount of content that they're putting in is not also going to bloat it further, right? Really what we want is a balanced experience. And hopefully that means updating some of the issues that people had with the previous versions. Anyway, I am most certainly going to be talking more about Isaac as it comes up to, you know, release day. I'm going to try my absolute darndest to get a review copy of the DLC, and if I do, and even if I don't, I most certainly will be recording some kind of footage. Because, I mean, I have to, you know? It's if there's any game that you can pin on me, it's probably this. And I don't know, maybe that's surprising to some of you, because I don't know how frequently I talk about it. You know, you might say that something like Slay the Spire or Rogue Legacy would be associated with me, but, you know, The Binding of Isaac, for me, it goes back to 8 years ago, when I started high school, you know? Like, it's been a part of my life for so long that I'll pretty much support anything that Edmund does, with Isaac at least. Anyway, folks, that's going to do it. Thank you so much for joining me, and until tomorrow, farewell.